Aha! This is Laborc, and it is so nice to have you here. Guys, if you are missing out any heroes from the Marvel Zombies core box, make sure you check out my Patreon because I started to do PDF guides, and some heroes will only receive a PDF guide. And in November, there will be 2 more PDF guides for Marvel Zombies featuring Miss Marvel and Scarlet Witch. These are the things you need. First, we cover the rotten skin with Tondia Brown using thin layers. This color will act as our darkest shadow. I use the painted version of the mini painted by Big Child Creatives for reference for the highlight. I leave a link to the reference picture in the video description. Papa Laborc mixes some Karak to the Tondia Brown for the highlights. With zombie skin, we don't really need to smooth out the skin. Since the sculpt is textured well enough, we need to increase the detail with our paint job. We like to highlight the right side of the face more and need to keep a high contrast on the bony face. Since this face is more bone than skin, we can't really emphasize the feminine look. I mean, there are some big differences between the bone structure of the brow ridge between male and female human skulls. So the female skulls usually has softer line around the brow ridge, but since we are painting a true scale 38mm miniature, I think it's enough if we paint a convincing meaty skull and don't care about if it looks like a guy or not. As you watch the process, I will have some trouble with it. Let's mix a bit more Karak to our Tondia Brown and keep reducing the highlight areas around the eyebrows, cheeks, nose bone and chin. If you examine the left side of the face, I created much smaller highlight areas and the bigger ones on the right side. That made the right side a bit bloated up, and I only fixed that when I took a photo of the finished mini in the end. So just keep the same highlight size on both cheeks and just go higher in value on the right side. Okay, I painted the eyes off camera with necrotic flesh, but use ice yellow or ivory to make them stand out more. I will do the same as well later. I painted the teeth black for pre-blackline the teeth for later for some extra definition, so make sure you do that. I wasn't happy with the values on the face, so with a little bit more Karak I pushed the highlights a little bit further with thin layers. I'm not glazing or using any blending method, just simply using thin layers. Which technically can be a blending method, so never mind. To increase the dead skin effect, I glazed some Deathworld Forest over the midtones. 2 to 3 layers, and it's really thin. It's around 1 part paint and 2 parts water. Green is a nice tone for undead skin, and with these browns, it creates a desaturated pale skin look. Now we paint the teeth with necrotic flesh and push the contrast mostly on the right side of the face. The teeth are not an easy task to paint nicely. Use a thicker consistency for the paint, so the off-white part will look nice and opaque, and leave a tiny black line between each teeth while doing so. I covered the scroll face she is holding in her hand with Nocturne Green. Highlight the top part of the face with German Camouflage Green with thin layers and glaze over the highlights to smooth out the transition. This face is not undead, and except the grooves on the chin, it's a smooth surface. Emphasize the grooves on the chin with the same approach, so only highlight the parts that face up. Add some pale sand to the previous green and reduce the highlight areas. I'm using desaturated highlights so the focal point stays more on Captain Marvel's head. I covered all the hair with Dumble Brown. I was experimenting with new hair tone. I wanted to make it blonde, but with a very desaturated blonde hair, so not that vibrant that you see in the Thor tutorial, for example. After that, I mix some Karak to the Dumble Brown. It's more like a value sketching phase, or that's what I told myself as I saw this, as I saw that this color is not going to work for blonde. Then I glazed some over the hair because I thought that should fix it. Remember guys, when colors are not working and your highlights are not in the right place, blending is not going to help you. After that I used Balor Brown because I know that some sort of ochre yellow would save me, and it pretty much did. This tone really complemented the whole hair and faintly looked blonde. So we can say all the previous steps was totally planned. Okay? Okay. I did some blending with the glazes, and I was thinking that it's quite interesting that her face is pretty much rotten to the bone, but her hair looks like it's from a shampoo commercial. This creates a funny contrast between the hair and the face, like she's an undead, but she still takes care of her hair. For the shiny hair locks I used pale sand and Balor brown. I started to pick out the shiny parts of the hair that face up on the top of the skull and where the Balor brown layer is more dominant. Lastly, I glazed some Balor brown next to the maximum highlights because it was a bit too desaturated with all these off-white highlights. Okay, now it's time for the suit. Let's cover the whole thing with Night Lord's blue. Then let's highlight the blue parts of the suit with Alaitok blue. Aim your highlights towards the chest, upper half of the abdomen, side of the waist and the right thigh. I did some glazing as well to make the transition from the dark blue to the Alaitok blue smoother. Try to leave some dark lines next to the ripped parts of the clothing to have some extra definition and leave the back of the mini darker with smaller highlight areas. Reduce the highlight areas even more with temple guard blue. Highlight the top half of the breast, ribcage, abdomen and thighs a bit more. This will be a bigger jump in value, so use thin layers to make the blend smooth like Granny's butt cheek. Let's glaze some more to make the surface even smoother. So you know guys, dilute your paint a bit more and remove the excess from your brush on a paper towel and move the paint from the darker to the brighter parts. Repeat the process until you are satisfied with the transitions. To push the contrast even more, I mix some ice yellow to the temple guard blue and reduce the highlight areas. I did that mainly on the front around the torso. Temple guard blue in itself is a very bright turquoise color, which is great for highlighting blue since it has yellow in it, but yellow in itself wouldn't be high enough in value at this point. That's why I use ice yellow, which is basically yellow mixed with white. Since I created this high contrast blue of a suit, the face didn't stand out as much, so I mixed some ice yellow to the necrotic flesh and added some tiny highlights over the forehead and the right cheek and eyebrow. For the red parts, I used Wordbearer's red. I covered the shoulders, gloves and boots, but I only cover around 60% of the gloves and the boots, so for the rest of their surface I leave them black and glaze over them with Wordbearer's red to create a darker red on those parts. I highlight the red parts using Wild Rider red with thin layers. I cover around 60% of the Wordbearer's red layer, and if your paint is thin enough, then it easily blends in with the previous layer. Mix some ice yellow to the Wild Rider red to create some maximum value highlights on the red bed, but I didn't check the consistency of the paint so it flowed into the recesses. If that happens to you, just quickly grab a damp brush and soak up the paint, and of course, slap on your tiny hand. Cover the gourd parts with XV88. I tried to figure out how to highlight the star on her chest. It's not as well detailed, so it's hard to find any angles on it. Just think about how each side of the star shape would fold and which of them face toward the highlight. Reduce the highlight areas with Zamesi Desert and blend this layer with some glazing. I did some edge highlights on the chest all over these golden stripes to increase the NMM effect. I mixed some ice yellow to the Zamesi Desert and pushed the contrast on the NMM. I only used this highlight on the chest and did some edge highlights again around the stripes. The painting tutorial for the base and OSL effect is Patreon exclusive. If you like to access to that content and support Papa Laborc and see more Marvel Zombies content, the link is in the video description. So thank you for joining me on this little painting adventure. A huge thanks to my Patreons who support these kind of videos. With special shout out to Jonathan Rhodes, Cold-Blooded Dom, Trying to Paint Minutes, Jonathan Mosner, Vlad D, One Sharp Joe Crafts, Glitchy Macrash, Guillaume Belanger. If you like to support the work of Papa Laborc, you can do that on Patreon, where you will have early access to these videos, you can find a growing collection of PDF guides, or if you need a little bit of extra help, online coaching is also available. I hope the rest of your day will be as smooth as a granny's butt cheek.